So, und da sind wir wieder zurück bei der nächsten Aufnahmesession von The Great Ace Attorney Adventures. In der letzten Aufnahmesession gingen wir ins Gericht, um unseren Herrn Natsume, den Anglistikstudenten, zu verteidigen. Und ja, wir konnten aufzeigen, dass die Möglichkeit besteht, dass er einen anderen Weg gelangt ist von seinem Buchladen aus, wo er Bücher gekauft hat, die aber halbwegs wieder zerstört wurde, weil die Baustelle da, die es verhindert hätte, nur 2 Meter breit war und er da easy hätte lang gehen können. Und dann hatten wir 2 Zeugen, wie hießen die nochmal? Mr. und Mrs. Beate, genau. Und die beiden haben ihn weglaufen sehen wollen von dem Tatort, wo das Opfer erstochen wurde quasi. Und die Mrs. Beate hat auch 4 Bücher gesehen. Dann haben wir aufgezeigt, es waren nur 3 Bücher am Tatort, was nicht stimmte. Das Opfer hatte noch ein 4. in der Hand. Und dieses 4. Buch war, wie hieß das nochmal? Alliance irgendwas. Alliance Dance oder so. Auf jeden Fall was mit einem Löwen. Und dieses Buch mit dem Titel war das Lieblingsbuch von dem Vermieter von Mr. Natsume, von unserem Angeklagten. Und der Vermieter hatte ja in seinem Haus so einen Brand durch einen Streit mit seiner Frau, / mit seiner Maid. Und wir wollten jetzt aufzeigen, dass es halt dieses Buch ist aus dem Haus des Vermieters. Aber die Jury hat entschieden, dass das nicht wirklich logisch ist, weil die immer Fenster geschlossen haben und das Buch dementsprechend nicht rauskommen konnte auf die Straße. Und ja, jetzt wurde er wieder von der Jury als schuldig beurteilt und jetzt haben wir wieder die Chance in der Summation Examination, auch in der Examination von dem Schlussplädoyer der Jury, nochmal eine Chance rauszuholen. Was ich ein bisschen merkwürdig finde, weil wenn man dann immer bei jedem Guilty so eine Summation Examination machen kann, da würde ich mich als Staatsanwalt ja total veräppelt vorkommen. Aber gut, wenn das unsere letzte Chance ist, den Trial hier zu wenden, dann ist das unsere letzte Chance. Und das versuchen wir jetzt. Let's go! I have considered the defense counsel's request for a further summation examination of the jury, and I have determined that the court must uphold the defense's judicial right to this procedure. So, counsel, you will now proceed with your second summation examination. I presume the jury is ready, Mr. Foreman? We are, my lord. Very good. In that case, I must ask each of you now to state clearly and concisely for the court the grounds on which you find the defendant guilty of this crime. Judicial findings. The jurors' contentions. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his. If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to this crime if the window was closed, can it? Dearie me, it was only a little book, hardly life-threatening, even with a direct hit. Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't bring home some pay tonight, I'll be in a tiny bit of trouble. Come to think of it, we had a fire at home a while ago. It gave me the sneezes. Yes, considerably more tangible arguments from all members of the jury this time around, it seems. With one notable exception, of course. My learned student friend was unable to find fault in the previous witness testimony. So the court must accept the fact that it was indeed the accused seen fleeing from the scene. And moreover, no one else was even at the scene to commit the crime. Well, if the eyewitnesses are correct, it would seem as if the conclusion is somewhat set in stone. I fail to see how it can be argued any other way. That means I'm afraid that during the summation examination, it's essential that you establish some other tangible explanation for the facts. But how? What would even constitute a tangible explanation here? Isn't it obvious? Who stabbed the woman, and how? Those two details are all you need to provide. Simply give us a name and the method by which the attack was conducted. And there I was thinking this might be hard. But Mr. Naruhodo, you have to do it, otherwise this really will be where the trial ends. No pressure then. That's quite enough preamble. Proceed with the summation examination, please. I presume you are prepared, Counsel? Oh, yes, my lord. Alright, Ryunosuke, focus your mind now. Clearly, the key to the summation examination is going to be juror number 4, the maid, or should I say, Miss Garrideb. We have a book that disappeared from the Garrideb's house on the evening of the incident, and the 4th book found in the victim's hand. There must be a way to link the two. Yes, that's what we have to find. Using every technique I've learned in my short career so far, whatever it takes. Don't forget to keep an eye on Mrs. Garrideb and how she reacts, even to the things other people say. Okay. Jury examination. The defense's rebuttal. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his. Hold it! But as we now know, there were 4 books, not 3. Well, what difference does it make? There's every possibility that the 4th book, in fact, belongs to the defendant's landlord. Yes, that's the part I have a problem with. Sorry? Well, at the point the woman was stabbed, this landlord fellow was at home, wasn't he? Enjoying a furious scrap with his wife or something, you said. That's not exactly how I put it, no. Well, anyway, the point is the fellow and his wife were somewhere else when it happened. I think that's what you call a strong alibi. So it couldn't have been the landlord who did it, which only leaves the Nipponese fellow. Honestly, I can't see what all this palaver's about. It's a done deal, isn't it? I suppose it is, since I've nothing witty left to say. If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. Hold it! So, you might be willing to change your decision, you mean? Oh my, such delight on your face, but I'm afraid I shan't be swayed by emotion. Despite what you may think of me, I am a very modern, metropolitan and rational woman. That's great. If one reads the morning papers, it's all forgotten by tea time, isn't it? So why read them in the first place? You see? Modern, metropolitan and rational thinking, wouldn't you say? And not at all extreme. As I see it, an overwhelmingly suspicious Japanese man has been implicated by overwhelmingly strong testimony. So despite 1 or 2 minor puzzlements, I do declare that the man is overwhelmingly guilty. Modern, metropolitan and rational logic, wouldn't you say? Overwhelmingly. But as modern girls are always delighted to embrace new fads, you know? So I'd be only too happy to consider an exciting new theory if you would come up with one. I'd be happy to do that too, if only I could. Let's do our very best not to disappoint the modern and metropolitan young lady. Right, I'm glad you omitted rational there. Ja, rational sieht anders aus. Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to this crime if the window was closed, can it? Hold it! But what about the possibility that the window was open? What about it? I mean, there's just no way it could have been. How can you be so sure? The prosecutor fellow over there said it earlier, didn't he? Winters in London are no joke. You don't want to invite that sort of cold indoors. So no, that window wasn't open. As Londoners like sitting by the fire and staying warm, see? Ich frage mich, ob das wirklich so ist in London. Also ich war in London bisher nur im Herbst, im Oktober, wo es noch relativ warm war. Also auch nicht so warm, dass man ohne Jacke rumlaufen konnte, aber schon noch aushaltbar warm. Und im Winter ist es wirklich schon so weit im Norden von uns, dass die Winter da signifikant kälter sind? Weiß ich nicht. Wasn't open. The window wasn't open, as Londoners like sitting by the fire and staying warm, see? But you couldn't categorically if you state that the window wasn't open, could you? It just wasn't. They wouldn't have opened it. Then what's the point of even having windows, huh? Counsel, you will kindly refrain from childish bickering. Oh, sorry. Somehow I need to show there's an undeniable possibility that the window was open. Because this young man isn't going to budge otherwise. Dearie me, it was only a little book, hardly life-threatening, even with a direct hit. Hold it! But the little book was on fire at the time, was it not? With flames of love, I'll have you know. There's really no such thing as a loving incendiary bomb. Well, he brought it upon himself. It's playing with fire to betray a fiery love. Isn't it? Well, don't you agree? Oh, well, any kind of betrayal is certainly a bad thing, yes. But I think the argument might have arisen out of your misunderstanding, Miss Garrett. Never you mind that. The point is, we were just having a jovial little dispute, nothing more. And I won't have any more of these suggestions that it was anything whatsoever to do with this crime. Right, well, we'll see about that. But what about juror number 5? He doesn't seem to be turning a hair at Miss Garrett's relentless onslaughts. It's almost as though he's used to it. What's the gentle soul he is? Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't bring home some pay tonight, I'll be in a tiny bit of trouble. Hold it! You just want to get this over with. How can you sit there and say something like that? A man's future is at stake here. Haben wir das nicht gerade schon genau gleich gesagt in der letzten Summation Examination? Well, him and me both then, like I said before. What? I told you already, I'm a day laborer, aren't I? If I don't bring home some weddies with me tonight, you'll find me floating face down in the Thames tomorrow morning. What? You heard me. My missus isn't one to mess about, you know? She can be fierce, believe you me. Another shining example of marital bliss then. A situation like this cropped up the other day. It was, well, do you know, it's funny, but I can't quite remember. Sorry? It was too frightening, that's the thing. I must have blocked it out. Helpful. I wonder if Mr. Beat will ever be dragged into the Thames by a scarf. Mr. Beate, I'll say. Okay. Don't even go there, Mr. Sato. There must be some way to jog his memory about this. Was war das denn jetzt? Just want to get it over with. Do you know it's funny, but I can't remember. A situation like this cropped up the other day. It was, well, okay. Come to think of it, we had a fire at town a while ago. It gave me the sneezes. Oh, stopp, ich wollte pressen. Hold it! Does that have anything to do with the decision about the defendant's culpability in this case? Sorry? What's that? You'll have to speak up, lad. Could you tell us more about that fire? It was last winter. My grandchildren baked me a lovely cake on my birthday. It had 75 candles on the top. It did. What a sight to behold it was. You put candles on a cake? Was it some kind of devil worship? Of course not. It was an angel cake, to celebrate my birthday obviously. It seems that's a common custom here in Great Britain, Mr. Naruhodo. Anyway, I mustered all my puff to blow them out. Only I must have blown wrong somehow. The flames didn't go out, but candles weren't flying all went flying all over the room. The furniture caught and everything went up. The whole place filled with smoke. This definitely sounds like devil worship to me. And by the sneezes, I presume you mean a cold. But how did you catch a cold from a fire? What a fiasco it was. The grandchildren, bless them, threw water over me as I tried to put out the flames. And then, because the whole room had filled up with smoke, of course, we had to open all the windows to clear it. Oh, das musste ja eigentlich auch dann bei dem Dings, wie heißen die nochmal? Bei den Vermietern der Fall gewesen sein. Garrett, genau. The windows. The biting winter air washed over me like the devil dancing on my grave. It did. I caught a terrible cold from it. It put me in the hospital for a while. I won't forget that birthday in Howie. I knew it was devil worship all along, but something about this old man's story is playing on my mind for some reason. We need to demonstrate who, apart from Mr. Natsume, could have attacked the young woman on the street, as well as how he or she could have done it. Yes, but once again, the jurors' statements are full of personal prejudice. A lot of them seem convinced they are right, even in the face of logical arguments to the contrary. I think you're going to need to pit them against each other to force them to accept an alternative explanation. Yes, I don't necessarily need to find contradictions between their assertions. Just a connection might do the trick. Alright, I see what I can do. If anything stands out, I go in for a strike. That's the spirit! Okay. There was some novel alternative explanation. Even if the woman was going back, it can't be related to the crime, the windows were closed. Winter of house fires are dire. You have to open windows to clear the smoke. That's when the chill gets you, see? Okay.
Objection!
These two juror statements clearly contradict one another. They do. How exactly, counsel? Don't point at me again. I told you it wasn't me. What's that you say? Speak up, lad. Speak up. Juror number 3. Do you see? Oh, me? See what, sir? Did you hear juror number 6's account of his birthday celebrations last year? It seems, despite being a Londoner, he once opened his windows in the middle of winter. Well, yes, of course, because it was an emergency. I mean, obviously, if the room was filled with smoke from a fire, then you'd be mad not to open the... Oh! Da kam der Moment der Realisation. Exactly. On the day in question, at the time of the incident, there was a fire in the Garrett household, and Mr. Garrett had the following to say about it. The whole place filled with smoke. Oh my head! Was hast du zu sagen?
Excuse me!
Juror number 4, do you have something to say about that? Mrs. Garrett. Oh, dearie me. What is the meaning of this? How dare you imply that I'm hiding who I really am? It's imperative that you confirm something for the court. So please, it's time to drop the pretense now. What is it? When the fire started in your house that day, did you or your husband open the window? What? I beg your pardon. What are you insinuating? The room would have been thick with smoke after the carpet and bookcase got fire as they did. In a situation like that, it's inconceivable that you wouldn't have opened the window. And what if we did? Oh, alright then. Yes, you're right. My husband was frantically trying to open the window, which can't have been easy since I continued to give him a justly deserved book battering. Even though your house was on fire? Oh, you never stop throwing until the anger subsides. It would be terribly bad for the nerves to do otherwise. Of course, I should have realized. That's a significant step forward, Mr. Naruhodo. You've managed to establish that the window was open. We simply must have added to Mrs. Garrett's formal statement. Now you mention it, yes, the window was open at the time. I clean forgotten, but it's true. The window could have been open when the woman was throwing books. I mean, it's definitely a possibility. There was some novel alternative explanation.
Hold it!
The fourth book, found at the scene of the crime, shows very obvious signs of fire damage. And the title of the book is The Lion's Pride. The same title, in fact, as the book that Mr. Garrodeb told us he had been reading. Well, I really couldn't say. On the day in question, did you or did you not throw at your husband the copy of The Lion's Pride that he had been reading? I did. It was the first thing I could lay my hands on, so I hurled it straight at him. And now you come to mention it, yes. He was rather enjoying reading it, you're right. Why did you not reveal this information to the court from the outset? Because I couldn't, you insolent little man. I didn't remember. At times like that, you pick up and throw whatever you can lay your hands on, as well you know. I really don't. I barely noticed I was throwing a book, much less the title of it. Was hast du?
Excuse me!
What is it, juror number 5? You know something. I've remembered what it was. That memory I'd blocked out. Ah! It was listening to what this granny was saying. Brought it all flooding back. Who are you calling a granny, you cheeky little devil? I'm Miss Garrodeb, or the maid, I'll have you know. The man doesn't even flinch. Please tell me that's not because he's so used to being hit all the time. It was about 2 weeks ago now. I just go back home from after work. Like, I put my hand in my pocket for the wages. I just earned that day and I nearly died. There was a hole. Every last penny had dropped out. Oh dear, what a disaster. You haven't heard the half of it, boy. Oh. The wife was cutting up some chicken at the time. I could hardly get the words out, but I told her straight. I've lost the day's wages, love. Next thing I knew, the blade was whistling past my ear, stuck into the wall next to me. It did, about an inch deep. No words, just terror. I could smell it then, you know? That god-awful stench of the Thames. I was sure I was going to end up face down in the muddy banks that night, I can tell you. Now, that's a real disaster, isn't it? I'll never use the word lightly again. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. When women lose their way, they'll throw anything at you. Knives, hatchets, hammers, you name it. Mr. Naruhodo, you mustn't think that all women are so short-tempered and unrefined. No, I wasn't thinking that. Das sind nur die Briten. Das sind nur die britischen Damen. Kappa. Throwing household objects at people is, well, it's so uncivilized. At least attack with honor, using a bow or the like. What? Attack? Who are you going to attack? Never mind. Anyway, this man's words could be rather significant, I think. Alright, we'll come back to the bow and narrow things later, if I dare. A woman in a rage will hurl almost anything at you. The kitchen knife really brought that home to me. Okay, wenn wir das jetzt... If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. Das wäre ja eine alternative Erklärung, dass sie ein Messer geworfen hat und das dann durchs Fenster gegangen ist, und das würde auch erklären, warum Natsume nichts gesehen hat. Also kein Täter, nur dass da plötzlich ein Messer drin war. Let's go.
Objection!
Those two statements clearly have a deeply significant connection. Good grief, you mean they don't contradict each other? Explain, counsel, at once. Juror number 2, do you think perhaps that this could be one such novel alternative? Oh my, whatever do you mean? An alternative explanation as to how the victim was stabbed in the back. What are you talking about? We've demonstrated that the fourth book, The Lion's Pride, that was found at the scene of the crime, originated in Mr. Garrideb's room on the top floor of his house. Therefore, it's equally possible that some other object besides the book could have found its way from the Garrideb household to the street below. Eh? What's that now? After all, Miss Garrideb could have thrown any number of different objects at her husband. Isn't that right, juror number 4? What are you insinuating now, you little beanpole? I'm beginning to think that ever since the true origins of this book came to light, perhaps she had the feeling this might be what happened. Now you listen here, you Eastern Geller. As the foreman of this jury, I demand a straight answer. You give us this yarn about some other object making its way out of the house. But what? What was it? I'm really taking a big gamble here. That was a bold accusation to make, but I haven't any real evidence to back it up. But I'm certain that at the very least this warrants further investigation. Alright, Mr. Foreman, I tried to explain the defense's theory. The other object that found its way from the Garrideb household to the scene of the crime was the jackknife.
Take that!
Juror number 4, Miss Garrideb. What? What now? I must apologize in advance for this. But I need you to confirm something else for the court. This knife. Have you ever seen this knife before? Ah! Good Lord, Counsel, what on earth are you doing? That's the weapon that was lodged into the victim's bag, man. Ich find's lustig, dass immer man sagt. My lord, remember that when the victim was attacked, Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb were in the throes of an argument. Mrs. Garrideb was hurling anything she could at her husband, who'd been backed up against the window. A window that had been opened to clear the smoke, through which the book sailed to land at the crime scene. You can't seriously believe that. The book was found in the victim's grasp. Are you saying that it flew out of the window and across the street to land neatly in her hand? Huh? Even my missus hasn't got an aim like that. Yes, I admit, there are many details we don't yet understand. But that's the point. That's precisely why we must not allow this trial to end. Not right now. Oh my. Ah! Miss Garrideb, your answer, please. Have you seen this knife before or not? Oh, ah! My lord, I wish to change my decision. I'm a woman of my word, after all. Thank you, madam. Yes, I agree. I certainly didn't see this coming, but I just don't think it would be right for this trial to come to an end now with so many unanswered questions. Mr. Foreman? I'd have to agree. Not that I think the granny did it, mind. Yes, you know what? I'm not quite happy about this at the moment either. All together now, ladies and gents. We did it! Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo. So, as a result of the defense's summation examination, a number of jurors' leanings have changed. 2 jurors called guilty, against 4 now calling innocent. Accordingly, the opinion of this court is divided. And this trial will continue. Oh yeah. Now then, Lord Van Zieks, how does the prosecution wish to proceed? This trial is rapidly descending into a farce. Like a corked wine, the first few sips are bitter enough. But what follows is so repugnant, it's good for nothing save the gutter. If I may, Lord von Zieks, the defense has just put forward a credible alternative explanation for what happened. Credible? Is that your considered opinion, Mr. Foreman? The defense's argument is a joke to which I barely know how to respond, but let me start by insisting that you must all familiarize yourself better with the relative positions of those places being discussed. What do you mean by that? What's his angle this time? It should already be more than apparent that between the crime scene and the Garrideb household, once a rather wide street, Briar Road, which means that the distance from the Garrideb's house to the scene is some, yes, 15 yards. Let me see, 15 yards, that's around 14 meters. 14 meters? Oh, that's a little farther than I'd imagined. And, as you ladies and gentlemen of the jury rightly noted as having potential significance, the fourth book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, the smoldering book, violently hurled by the lady of the house, traveled some 50 yards, to land on the opposite side of the road, neatly between the collapsed victim's fingers and thumb. Is that your final conclusion, my learned and deluded friend? And did the jackknife follow a near identical trajectory to plunge into the middle of the victim's back? This fantasy is somewhat stretching the notion of having a bad day for the victim, I think. Even those pathetic serialized detective stories have more believable plots. Ha! There's nothing I can say to that. That prosecutor laughs the sound of his own voice. Miss Susato, serialized detective stories are pathetic, are they? How dare he? Maybe let's pick our battles here. My lord, might I be allowed to speak? As judicial assistant, you may speak for the defense. Yes, go ahead. The prosecution may consider the idea a fantasy, but what the defense has postulated was believable enough to persuade the jury to change its leaning. And as such, the court has a duty to explore this alternative explanation as thoroughly as possible. To that end, juror number 4, Miss Joan Garrideb, must be called to testify and submit to cross-examination. Saints alive! A cross-examination of a juror! Naja, sie hat mit dem Fall zu tun, sie ist dann nicht mehr redlich mit neutral drin, würde ich sagen. Also sie sollte sowieso aus der Jury raus, wenn das eine believable Jury sein sollte. Order! 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 Well, this is highly irregular. It is unprecedented for a member of the jury to be summoned to the witness stand.
Objection!
And unnecessary. Lord von Zieks. There are already witnesses in the stand, whose testimony the defense may further cross-examine. If my learned friend's farcical theory has any truth in it, then both the burning book and the jackknife must have flown through the sky before this couple's eyes. And we must assume they would be able to testify accordingly. What say you, witness? Yes, sir. Constable Wally Beato reporting for duty, sir. Well. Good morning, officer. Sorry for dozing until now. Sir, I haven't slept for a month on account of a villain who's appeared on my beat, sir. Oh, they are so heroic, these London bobbies. Patricia, my darling, I've been neglecting you, but no more. Oh, Rowley, my hero, you make me swoon. Very well, I hereby reject the defense's request. Oh, and order the witnesses in the stand to testify again. State forthwith before the court any details pertaining the defense's alternative explanation of events. Yes, sir.